All right, guys. Hey, how you doing? This is Jay Hughes, and I am with Jay Kroll, my good friend Jay Kroll. Jay is the Senior Vice President and Regional Manager of Production for Cornerstone Home Lending in Seattle, Washington. And Jay has been in the mortgage business for 17 years, and he leads a excellent team. They are in the top 1% in production for mortgage volume in the country. And not only is Jay managing a really highly successful team, he also personally originates as well. He closed in excess of $179 million in 2019. Jay's got a passion for helping other loan officers grow their businesses and their influence. He's presented it in different forums, including a Todd Duncan Sales Mastery back in 2012. Jay's married to his wife, Jennifer, and they've been married for nearly 19 years, I think you said, Jay. And they have a son, Kingston. I love that name. Kingston's 9 years old, and a daughter, Giovanna, who is 6. And Jay, I was actually, I pulled out my abacus and did some calculations. I think we've known each other for like 35 years or something like that. Can you believe that?
Wow, that's wild. That's crazy.
When we knew each other, when we knew each other at first, I was probably like 12 and you were probably 6 or something like that. But we knew each other nonetheless back then.
Yeah, it's got to be, well, if it's 35, so that would have been like make me 6 at the time. But I mean, I remember your dad as far back as I have like memory of being around NBC camps. So, your dad was, I love going down to his shop down on La Grande. So I have, those are memories that probably would be about my daughter's age. So 35 years seems about right.
Yeah, I think so. Crazy. I know I have. You knew my dad well. I know your dad well, and some of my fondest memories are NBC camps and with your dad and my dad down there too. So anyway, hey man, thanks for being on today. It'll be fun to catch up again and just kind of talk about what's going on in your world right now.
Absolutely.
So let's jump in. It's been with the COVID-19 and all that's been going on with that. We've said it's been crazy. It's been a crazy few weeks. And so I just want to hear from you, I guess, right off the top, like what's going on in your mind? What's front and center with you right now? What are you thinking about? What are you executing on? Let's just start right there.
Yeah. I'd say, when I think about what's on top of my mind, it's really about coming back to the basics. So it's really about focusing on what's important and, giving my best to, my best. So that's obviously taking care of my family and, doing things to just take care of my health and be mindful about the time frame that we're in, which is it's today. And so, my dad, and like probably, when you were going to NBC camps, he talked about, like how's your PMA and people have their response, kind of my formative years and late teens, early 20s. One of the things that he would ask often was, where are you? And the response was right here, right now. And so I'm really trying to focus on being right here, right now, because there's just so much noise and, with the volatility in, the mortgage-backed security and bond pricing and interest rate volatility and, dealing with the unemployment situation and how are we going to get people approved and dealing with, our family not being able to, we had to cancel some trips and what's our summer plans going to look like. And, the other hobbies that I like to do outside of the home, there's just so much out of our control. And so trying to come back to focusing on the things that I can control, and I can control my attitude. I can control my effort. I can control how I respond to things. And so I feel like I'm best at doing those 3 when I'm present. And so, really, really focus on being right here, right now. And whether that's, while I'm here on this call with you, that I'm locked in, or, I just wrapped up lunch with my family and I've been, trying to go back to how I in my career, I've always, I've never had, a lunch time for myself. That's either, my time to myself, so like workout or stuff with the family. And so I typically, work through lunch, or I have like a a work lunch, where I'm meeting with somebody for business purposes, and a meal happens to be a part of that. And so I've decided, like, hey, I'm gonna leave my phone in my office. I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna go have a physical lunch with my family every day. And so I blocked that out on my calendar, and I've been doing that. So just little things like that has helped me be able to stay more present, and I've been in a lot better state of mind in this like real hyper focus of being present.
Dude, well said. I mean, like, I'm excited at the answer. It's not what I was expecting you were going to say. But what you're describing is no small thing. The attitude piece, and really being, because of all the uncertainty and all the different variables that are taking place, the stresses that come along with that, to be present and be locked in, man, like that's huge. So it makes me, I do want to ask you a quick follow-up to that, would be, with your, well, I'd say in two ways, like with your team, your group, those that work for you, how are you helping them and encouraging them to kind of embrace that same message of being present, of being locked in, of focusing on, their own personal attitudes? And then if applicable, maybe share a little bit too, like with maybe some of your agent partners or other business referral partners, if there's anything you're doing to encourage those folks in the same way, and how you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of had to move from like office meetings to, Zoom calls or conference calls. And so, I think there's been a lot of change, and there's been a lot of, probably a flood of communication. So I'm trying to just keep mindful conversations out there, as far as, what are you doing to stay sane? Here's some things that I'm trying to do. Right. Encouraging people to find some breaks, really trying to encourage people to set some boundaries on their workday. We've had, we had the jumbo, kind of thing hit a couple weeks ago, where jumbos got hit really hard and investors disappeared. And so, we had probably for my area, the LOs that I serve, we probably had about 45 million in jumbos that we needed to evaluate and figure out how we're going to solve those solutions. And, that was, something where Thursday it really kind of hit us, and, our CEO wants an answer for all those by Monday morning. So that was, there's a lot of conversations over the weekends. And so you're burning the candle both ends. And I'm typically pretty good with managing my boundaries. I don't believe in that whole philosophy that I know some loan officers do, where they're like, don't call me in the evenings, don't call me on the weekends. And that's their approach with their referral partners and their clients. And, for me, I kind of think like, well, then why don't they just work with a bank? So I'm an independent mortgage banker, so I don't maintain banker's hours, but I vacation a ton, and I get to do life the way I want to do life. But, on that give and take, my family understands, like, I might take an hour on a Saturday, to help somebody. Right. But at the same time, I've never mowed my lawn. I don't own a rake. I hire all that stuff out because that brings me zero joy. And some people are like, oh, you're being lazy. And I'm like, okay, well, what's my hourly wage? And so I've come to the conclusion that, like, I can do one more loan a month, and that's going to cover my yard expense for the year. Right.
So the year. Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, it's like, I have friends that love working in the yard. Like, great. If that's a hobby for you, that's awesome. Like, and I have some friends that are like, I can't believe you like coaching your kids in sports. That would drive me crazy. And I'm like, well, I love it. Like, it's fun. I coach first grade soccer. I didn't play soccer, but I love coaching my daughter and her team this fall. And they're like, let's do it again next year. And I'm like, that's great. So I looked forward to, getting up on Saturday and going and coaching her team. If somebody would have said, hey, you got to work in your yard for an hour, I would have dreaded that all week, and then that would have made me be unproductive. So it's like trying to be mindful of, like, the things that bring you energy, and encouraging my staff and the loan officers that I serve to really find things that are going to put some gas in their tank on a daily basis, whether that's reading or walking or exercising of some sort, or, even just like getting caught up on Ozarks. like if that brings you some joy and gets you some unplug so you can come back the next day with a full tank of gas and can hit hard, then do whatever that takes.
Well said. And again, I just this mindset piece, it's so easy to gloss over it. And I just want to encourage those of you that are listening to really, really heed what Jay's talking about, because there are so many stressors going on right now that to have your mind straight and to be locked in and present, again, it's no small thing. So thanks for sharing on that a ton. And by the way,
on the agent piece, I didn't answer that all the way. So I have some offices that have asked me to, zoom in on their, weekly calls. And so I've been, trying to give them updates and some clarity on things that are, evolving in our industry and how it relates to them or may impact their clients. And, I do try to, put things in perspective as far as, this Shell 2 pass, and it's going, it's in light of the bigger problems that we face, these are minor. So I think that's also a message that I think is a good reminder for people.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you're a leader, and I know for a fact, I mean, a lot of your agent partners look at you, as a leader, and it's a way for you to make an impact that's much bigger than the next transaction, the next house. You're making an impact on these folks, both agents and then those on your team, in significant ways. So, and by the way, too, I want to one thing you share about paying for other people to do it. I don't know that you do it this way, but it is a way for you to employ young entrepreneurs when you've got a 15-year-old kid that's mowing lawns in the neighborhood. That's a great way to encourage him or her, as opposed to doing it yourself. So I love what you shared on that. Okay, hey, so I know you're limited on time, so I want to try and ask you a couple more questions. We mentioned your dad, right at the very top, and talked about my dad for a minute as well. But your dad, like he is a tremendous role model for me, and literally thousands of people. Those of you who are not in the Northwest would not be familiar with a basketball camp that Jay's dad started, I don't even know, 30, 40 years ago, probably. It was called Northwest Basketball Camps. And so I think one thing I have to say regarding your dad, I became a Christian when I was 9 years old. Your dad was speaking on stage, and that was my first experience with the message of the gospel. And so, like, when I talk to people about my backstory, it's like Fred Kroll, your dad, comes up often. And but what I want to ask you was, he's had a big influence on thousands of people, literally. But Fred was and is a very competitive guy, a big time entrepreneurial spirit, and you grew up with him. And so I'd love to maybe just share a couple things, thoughts you had about what you learned from your dad, either about life or business or anything related to your career. I'd just love to have you share a little bit about him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a hero, and it's just, him and my wife have had such a huge impact on my life. And, there's that song by Josh Groban that says, "You raise me up." And I personally have always felt that every time I hear it, I just think of him, because he's really, had such a profound impact on my life. And I know so many others. But yeah, he's a hero and is, one of a kind. So, somebody was, giving me a bad time about him last week and said something about, "Oh, you got big shoes to fill." And I was just like, I have never tried to compare myself to my dad.
Yep.
We run totally different races. I wouldn't want to compete with that. He's amazing. And, I would say, a couple of the things that I hold close to my heart from him is just that drive to always be your best and whatever that you're doing. And so I think, his kind of internal saying was the relentless pursuit of excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just trying to be disciplined with that. And, we all fail, he fails, everybody falls short at times. And so I think it just comes back to, success is not a destination, but this journey, and we're all, going through that journey at a different pace. And so, my lessons from that have been, don't get caught up in comparison. And, your best is what excellence is really about. And so how can you, raise that bar each day? And, I think another a little piece of that, of kind of growing up around NBC, and, I'm really, really close to my dad. I mean, he's one of my best friends, and he always treated me like that. Like, he didn't treat me like a little kid when I was a little kid. He treated me, I think, in a way that was how he would want me to be at the same in the future. So I think that treating people really well and respecting people, I'm a little bit more to task than he is, and he's a little bit, focused on the person, which has, there's some pros and cons to that, right, on both sides of the table. So I think, his love for people and being able to stay engaged with somebody in a moment and really make that connection is such a valuable trait of his. And so it's a reminder for me to always to do that and to notice people. I think that my dad cares so much. And so growing up, if we had 300 people come to a camp and he got one bad review, he might massage that for too long. And so one of my personal, lessons as a result of that, kind of being exposed to that inner circle, really, from my whole childhood,
mm-hmm.
is to be mindful that, a mistake happens, but I'm not gonna let that live too long. And that, if you get too focused on that, it can be a little bit a distraction from the good, right? And so you got 299 that are super excited, and not saying you shouldn't at all address that mistake or learn from it or talk to that customer and say, hey, tell me what happened. I really appreciate that feedback. We're going to learn from it. But at the same time, we're in this business, and, I want my reviews to be exceptional. But when we do get one, we have to sometimes just say, hey, we're not going to be all things to all people. And, sometimes they're right. They got totally accurate feedback.
That's right.
Let's learn from it. Let's not repeat that mistake. And sometimes you just have to own it. And I found that, for some of my most loyal long-term clients are people that I screwed up with, at the very beginning. But, when that mistake happened, I picked up the phone and said, I'm not going to pass the buck. I'm not going to, I never, and it drives me crazy if I hear a loan officer that wants to blame a processor or blame an underwriter or blame something. Hey, have an ownership mindset. And without a doubt, my dad definitely taught me that. I mean, that was driven home. The buck always stops with you when you run a business, and being accountable to all those things, with, to no end was always there. But I think learning how to balance that a bit is from a standpoint of like, own it, learn from it, solve it, but also flush it, and try to flush it quick.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, in one piece, like the mistake that's made, it's significant, but the flushing it piece is easy to do when it's not who you are. It's not your identity. And that goes both ways. You, Jay Kroll, are not your worst mistake. You're not the best thing you've ever done either. That's not who you are as an identity. But I know your dad had an unbelievable mindset on kind of the buck stops here, and
totally,
which had a profound.
And I think it's
well.
Right. So I think for me, it's been, and how do you do that? And he always challenged me on like, hey, how do you be better? How do you be better? And his always joke was like, it was easy for me to be a better dad than my dad was to me, for me to be a good dad to you. And he's like, so my challenge to you is like, how do I be a good enough dad that it's really hard for you to beat me as being a dad? So that's one of those things that I do wake up often and go, okay, I got to beat Pops today because he was a really good dad.
I love that. Okay, hey, so thanks for sharing on that. That personally, that love that, and we literally could fill a couple hours just talking about that topic right there, your dad, and some of the stories from his life and how he's impacted people, and the principles, biblical principles, really that tie into that. But I wanted to ask you, you've been through some tough markets and tough circumstances, and we mentioned at the top, things that are going on with the COVID-19 and its impact in the markets and financial and uncertainty and whatnot. I'm just curious, like, what your take would be, like, as you reflect on what's going on today and the challenges today, and you think back to other challenging circumstances, challenging markets, maybe 2008, 2009. What are some similarities or what are differences as you think about and you compare today versus some of these other markets that you've been through, and then what you guys are doing to overcome some of these current challenges? Maybe that's working from home or other.
I think the one piece of it is that we as humans are resilient, and I think the American economy in general is resilient too. So I have faith that this will pass. What the future looks like, I believe it's going to be different. Just like, post Dodd-Frank, things were different,
Yep.
Going to the airport ever since 9/11 has been different, and it's never gone back to the way it was, before 9/11. So, this is such a big impactor. It's going to have material change. But at the same time, that's something that, hopefully, good comes out of it. So my thought is to try to maintain and have a mindset of hope and positivity for the future. I would say, it felt in the jumbo space, it felt a lot like 2008, 2009, when the rug got pulled, and a lot of the jumbo market has tightened up. Guidelines have gotten a lot harder. Obviously in our market, jumbo is a meaningful component to the business that we do, considering home prices and the unemployment, how strong our employment is, and median income. So we need the jumbo, and so I think monitoring that is something that is a top of mind for me, and seeing how the investors are going to continue to either retract or expand those guidelines. And I think a lot of that's going to be dependent on the health of the economy, which, I think considering where we're looking with earnings are probably going to be, we're going to hit a rough season. So I think we won't really know about that until after we get through the second quarter.
Yep.
So I think that for me, it does come back to really looking at the people that we're serving and how do we come up with good solutions. And so what I've always looked at is that regardless of the climate, from an underwriting standpoint, that you have to be a problem solver, and you have to look at how to create good solutions. And I know that if I'm in a place of fear or worry or concern, my creativity goes to the toilet. And so trying to make sure that I'm being in a place of having positivity, understanding that, like, if I can exercise my gratitude muscle and be in a place of gratitude on a daily basis, that's going to give me the highest probability of being in a creative place, and knowing that I really need to be creative right now and helping people solve those problems and issues that are coming up. And whether that's, addressing, people that are in a furlough situation and how to navigate their interest rate protection till they're back to work, or dealing with people that are having a massive decline in their income. But, how do we make that solution still work to meet the guidelines and do it all on the up and up. But figure out ways to get those people into their home or get them into a situation they can save money, because, it is my belief that, we in the mortgage industry have a great opportunity and duty to help people save money and help them maintain, you know, their home ownership.
Mm.
And I think at the same time, you know, for a lot of those people that are prospective buyers, I think it really comes back to educating them, because if they can understand how the low cost of financing today, not having to go out and compete with as many buyers, puts them in a great advantage, right? And if we were to see a big dip in home values, let's say we saw a 5% correction, you know, but if they wait until that correction and rates are up a full percentage point,
right,
in our market, that doesn't save them any money. That's actually going to cost them more money.
Absolutely.
And they missed out in a bunch of other components of, you know, having a home and principal reduction over the last year if they wait. So I think we have a duty to make sure we don't put people in situations that they can't afford and they can't, you know, to repay. And, you know, trying to make sure that we're on top of all the details, you know, and just like, you know, if someone will listen to this call next week or in a month from now, some of the things that I'm about to say could be out of date, but, you know, understanding what does forbearance mean to somebody? If I'm thinking, hey, if forbearance might be really beneficial for me today, and I go into that, am I going to be able to qualify in next fall when I want to buy a new house because I'm going to show that I haven't made a payment for 90 days? Is that going to be a black eye? And making sure people understand the risk and reward of all this. And I think it really comes down to education, service, and sharing that perspective. But, you know, I think that's one of the pieces that I'm trying to communicate to real estate agents and to, you know, prospective buyers is you're really in a great opportunity because you're not dealing with the multiple offer situation that we were seeing, you know, 45, 60 days ago. And, you know, sellers that have their property on the market, that means they're motivated right now. And B, you know, you're looking at historically low interest rates. So I think, you know, that's something that people need to understand, that this is a great opportunity. And that's something I'm really trying to communicate as something that's when you look back at like my 17 years of being an originator, that's something that I want, that I take away, is that there's certain times that are great times to buy. And it's typically not when everybody else is rushing out to do it.
Yeah. Well, Matt, so really, really well said. And we don't have time for me to recap that. But like, I do want to just underline something that you started out our discussion talking about being present and being locked in, and that's kind of been front of mind for you. And like, that ties directly in with what you were talking about as far as right now needing to be a problem solver. And it takes creativity to be a problem solver. You can't do that. You can't do that if you're not mentally locked in, if you're not present. Same thing with educating people why right now could be the best possible time for a prospective buyer to enter the market. Might not be, but it could be. But that, again, that takes creativity. It takes a mindset that's eager to solve a problem for an individual, and you can't do that, like you said, without the right mindset and being present, paying attention to your attitude and your effort, which are things you can control. So all that ties in together really well there. Hey, I know that we both have to jump here in a minute. So before we wrap, is there anything else you wanted to hit that we didn't have time yet today to talk through?
No, I mean, I think I just hope that there's some value in some of the things that I'm saying. Obviously, free advice is worth the cost, but my opinion is we're definitely in unprecedented times, and the best thing that we can all do is to focus on being our best each day, because there's a lot of people that really depend on us. And I think sometimes we sell ourselves short in the mortgage industry as really having a vocational impact. And I think if we can come back to a place of service, we are really needed.
Mm. Well said. Hey, Jay, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate you taking the time to do that today. And boy, God bless you and your family. please pass along my best to your mom and your pops. And yeah, just appreciate you being with us today.
Yeah, blessings to you. I know you'd asked me earlier about a book, if I've read anything that's good recently.
Yeah. You got one?
Well, I got a couple thoughts for you. You know, I'm a huge fan of Ryan Holiday. He wrote The Obstacle is the Way,
Yep.
The Ego is the Enemy, and Stillness is the Key. And so, you know, I think this is a great reminder to check out The Obstacle is the Way, because, you know, one of the messages that I've been talking to people is, you know, we spend a lot of time on emotional intelligence with our group. And that's one of those things we talk often about. And, you know, we're in the season that's the test. And I came across something the other day as like, when we take a test, the teacher is silent. So we're all in the test. And so I think it's a good reminder to embrace some of those messages from those books. But the book that I just got done reading most recently was Beneath a Scarlet Sky. And it's a fictional novel. Well, it's a historical novel that has some truth to it. Mm-hmm. It's set in Italy during World War II. And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, EQ people that say stop reading self-help books and only read great novels because that helps you develop empathy.
Sure.
Regardless, it's such an amazing story. And the fact that a lot of it has true components to it is really staggering. But it's a way harder season of life than what we're going through right now. You know, and I've talked to some loan officers and like, oh, what we're going through is the hardest thing ever. And I'm like, maybe in our lifetime, but let's just put it in perspective. Like, this isn't World War II. This isn't World War I. We're not fighting in Vietnam.
Dude,
so
exactly.
You know,
exactly.
Relative to that. And so reading that book is really kind of like sobering to think like, this is hard, but we're not getting bombed. This is hard, but like my best friend isn't getting yanked out and lynched and killed because of his beliefs.
Yep.
So it's a great story to check it, a novel to check out. And I think, you know, when we go back to fiction and understand that it is a tool that actually helps develop empathy in our mind, and that will actually increase your emotional intelligence and help you be a good loan officer, the more empathetic you are, that going back to fiction, that's as helpful for you as, you know, reading. And I think they got to be good books, but that's as helpful as reading, you know, Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
I'm going to cue it up and I'm going to read it. And we will, for those of you that are listening, we will link both I think you said Obstacle in the Way, and then I missed the first. I know it's Scarlet Sky was the end of the second one. What was the full title of that one, Jay?
Beneath a Scarlet Sky.
Okay.
And the author is, let me see, it's Mark Sullivan.
Okay. Well, we'll link to both of those.
And it's on Amazon. You can get it for pretty inexpensive. And then since we're on the topic of books, I will tell you, I don't know if you knew this, but my dad is going to have a book roll out this spring. And he's got a lot pre-sold already. So it's going to be exciting. It's a daily reader called Words of Hope.
Words of Hope. You can also check out Fred Kroll's, I believe it was his first book. It was Meet My Head Coach. Is that right, Jay?
That's right. That's out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could keep going here, Jay, but I'm going to let you go because I know you told me you've got a client coming in right now. So we'll link to those books. And again, man, appreciate you so much. Excited to hear both how you're doing from a production standpoint, but just know, like, I know you're impacting your team, the agents that you serve, the borrowers that are coming in and out of your office. So I just want to encourage you to continue to do that and to do it at a really high level.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jay. I appreciate you, and blessings you and your family.
All right, man. Thanks so much.